Whether you're a seasoned vet of the payments industry or a brand new rookie who just heard the term dual pricing for the first time, you're in the right place. This is the only podcast that shares the strategies and stories behind selling merchant services, all from the perspective of those on the front lines. Welcome to AgentFirst. All right. Welcome to the latest episode of AgentFirst. I'm Jon. He's Justin.
Hello.
We're in a new space.
Yeah, I love this. This is awesome.
We just recorded another one, and I'm not sure which order they're going to come out. So either we sound silly that we're in a new space, or we're in a new space.
Who knows? Yeah.
Where it's the same studio where we've been recording, but they made this cool little kind of podcast studio for us.
I love it. It's awesome.
So, yeah, it's
feels
really
very, very inviting.
Yeah.
You know, roll around the rug a little bit. You can't see you there in the rug, but there's a rug down.
I'm a little disappointed that I wore shorts and you didn't, because it's the first time we've recorded that we weren't both in shorts.
I think it's probably only the 10th day in the last year I wore jeans, so it's a little chilly in Phoenix today, but normally I still wear shorts, but I don't know why today.
So we'll put something across the bottom of the screen here, just blocking from, we don't want to show too much light.
That's right.
So and it's funny because we haven't shied away from naming companies, but we're just going to say there was a company in our industry that got acquired, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And obviously in your role at PayCompass, that was something that impacted us.
Yeah.
Not directly, but certainly indirectly, especially as agents or maybe looking for places to land. And so I thought it would be really interesting to, I knew you did some travel and you kind of had a chance to sit and break bread and meet with folks. I'd love to just kind of hear about, maybe the questions that you got, not necessarily specifically about PayCompass, because obviously that's not the focus of this. But I have to think that some of those questions are probably some of the same ones that people that listen to us are asking about consolidation in the industry, about changes in the industry. And so I just thought, if you'd be willing to share maybe some of the questions that you got more than once, and maybe a little bit of how you answered them. If you can remember the answers you made up on the spot. So
I feel like you got the same questions 147,000 times.
I was going to say. I'm guessing you don't have to think hard about this.
Yeah. And I don't mind talking about who it is. I mean, this is all factual, where I'm not going to sit here and share opinions or, and I don't think there's anything wrong about what happened. But, a company that I formerly was one of the original founders of, and has been in the industry quite a while, and has done some great things. A company called Beyond, or Get Beyond. We went by Beyond when I was there, and then changed to Get Beyond a little later. Was acquired, and I think a lot of people kind of saw it coming, but it was definitely a shock and surprise to many people. And the fact that it was acquired by a large company in the industry named Global Payments, who does a lot of acquisitions as well. And not a huge surprise, I don't think, to a lot of people, but to some people maybe who newer to the industry, a little bit of a like, oh gosh, what do I do now, right? And at the end of the day, an acquisition is an acquisition. It's business, it's going to happen, and that's what I try to remind people at first. And the day it got announced, it was a few days before Christmas. The day it announced, I kind of put a post out there helping people to understand, like, hey, take your time, just relax. This is all going to work itself out over time. Many of us have been through this before. Figure out what's the right steps for you and decide. And so, at the end of the day, they were all W-2 employees of Beyond, and therefore going to become W-2 employees or they had the choice to become W-2 employees of their subsidiary, a global subsidiary, Heartland Payment Systems, and become that. And so there was a lot of questions. And so, me being, obviously, I used to work at Heartland, and then I was one of the founders of Beyond, and then I left, and then, a lot of people have remained great friends with, so I naturally became a person that got called a lot, asked a lot of questions. What do I do? What's the choices? What's happening? That sort of thing. So I would definitely say one of the most common concerns out there is just the ongoing consolidation in the industry. That by far the most common, concern, just heartburn in general of what's next. I got in this industry because I want to build my own residual. I want to build a portfolio. I want to build something for the long term. And while, when consolidation and buyouts happen, those companies honor their agreements. Their agreements usually give them the opportunity to buy you out, buy out your entire portfolio, give you a big lump sum of cash. And while on one hand that's great, everybody loves a big lump sum of cash, you are building a portfolio because you want to have that monthly recurring revenue. And so there's a lot of concern around that, a lot of concern about what's next. What do I do to protect myself so that doesn't happen? And my recommendation for anybody who's looking for that, there are a lot of people that don't mind that. There are a lot of people that are okay with, that W-2 world. But my recommendation to them is try to go build your own thing. Work with a company, whether it's us or anybody else out there that gives you that ability to build your portfolio and go for it. Now, that doesn't mean that somewhere down the road, those companies might not be sold as well, and there's always that possibility. But there are companies you can team up with that give you a lot more protections, a lot more opportunities than others. They give you the ability to build it and not have to worry about that just sudden buyout. So that kind of being, the portfolio buyouts being forced upon people definitely upset a lot of people. A lot of people were really happy about it. They liked it. But I'd say the vast majority of people were very concerned about that part of it and looking forward and saying, well, what are you going to do? What's this company going to do?
Yeah.
What do you know about this company? How about this? And so there's been a lot of crystal ball discussion for sure.
And I certainly won't ask you to speculate, but I have to think that's all right, well, if I'm going somewhere next, maybe because I didn't want to be a part of something this big and corporate, how do I figure out which one isn't the next one on their to-do list of doing that? Yeah, there's a story I know of a person who literally left one of the big companies in a very public way, went to one of the small companies, and then the small company got bought by the big company a few weeks later, and hey, you're back, nice, and so that person wasn't around very long. So there's, you obviously don't want to be in that situation, but there are a lot of companies out there that are not looking to get acquired. They're nowhere near getting acquired. You can build a tremendous portfolio at those places, and that's what a lot of people are looking for. Now there are a lot of people that are sticking along and going right along with it, and that's great. And I've given that recommendation to many people, hey, it sounds like the right fit for you is just to keep moving forward. Stay with right where you're at because you like that model. But the people that are truly looking to build something for themselves and for their own, that like that 1099 lifestyle, there's a lot better opportunities there for sure. What other kinds of questions did you run into as you were kind of doing your crisscross world tour, U.S. tour?
Yeah, mainly the US. I didn't leave the U.S. too often. There was a lot of questions around, and this can get into a whole other topic of things we can talk about, but just some of the fees that are being seen out there by other processors, and whether they're legit. There's a lot of. It's become this very gray area of, it's been there on some processor statements, some processors charging these fees. That's been there for so long that I've almost well, is it real? Is it actually there's actually a cost of this? Is it a pass-through cost from Visa, MasterCard, or is it some legitimized service that they're doing that I just don't understand? There was a lot of questions around that. And there's certain processors that do that worse than others, or I'd say are more guilty about it than others, and use those fees. So there's a lot of conversations around that. What is, are there certain requirements out there, and this company is charging these fees to offset those requirements, and why aren't you doing that? And so that was a very interesting one. That was, there's a lot of tiptoeing around that because, at the end of the day, any processor can charge any fee they want to. If the merchant agrees to it and signs off on it, you've agreed to it. That's not how we work at Pay Compass. We're not about having all these additional fees. That's not what we do. But there's some processors that do, and that's their business model. And so right, wrong, or indifferent, that's your decision. As a salesperson, you want to go along with that for sure. But that was definitely one of the big ones out there, trying to understand that model. And then the other one was just how many different business models exist in our industry and understanding what's the right fit for that person. And I try to think of myself as not being just, I'm trying to recruit everybody and get everybody to come to pay companies. That's definitely not the thing for us. And I think any responsible ISO would do the same thing, would say, well, I just don't think we're the right fit for you. Somebody who's brand new, that you're not the right fit necessarily for pay companies. There are places that are a great fit for you. And many other ISOs feel the same way. And so trying to find the place that has the right tools for that person, because there are different businesses. There's some out there that are, 100% commission, or 100% residual, that's all you make. There's some that have a mixture of we pay you a small salary and then a smaller commission. There's some that out there have escalating scales, and some of them are W-2, some of them are 1099, a mixture of all of them. And what fits your lifestyle best? And so, at pay companies, we're 100% residual only. That's all that you get paid once a month for your residuals, and that's our model. But that might not be the right fit for everybody. A lot of that. Those were really, I think, the most common questions out there, and diving into those. And I think this all started. We're pretty close. We're right at a month now. This has been going on, and definitely it's dying off. There's a lot less conversations happening, a lot less of that happening, but. There was just a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation being put out there, and I'm humbled, I guess, that many people reach out to me to try to get the straight information on everything. But I was saddened to see how much misinformation was out there, how many people were using certain angles in their business to say, well, we're superior because of X, Y, Z, but really at the end of the day, stop, slow down, and think, what does X, Y do for me as a sales agent? And whatever X, Y, Z is might be different, but whatever it is, how does that benefit me? What is that doing to benefit, my business every day and my family long term?
Yeah, and I'll give you credit, not that you're asking for it, but I sat alongside you as you had some conversations with some people that were basically saying, hey, I want to come on board, and you basically talked them out of it, right? Because again, it isn't necessarily the right fit for everyone. Right. It is about kind of figuring out, where you're at in your career and where you're at in your experience.
Absolutely.
And, what kind of portfolio future you have and all those kind of things.
Yeah. We're not
and I know we've talked, we've done episodes where we've talked about kind of the W-2 and 1099. One of the things that I took away from this is a lot of these people were essentially forced into making a decision about where they wanted to work.
Right.
And again, to your credit, I don't feel like we ever actively try and encourage anyone to come work with us or to go work elsewhere.
Right.
But it did kind of open that, that should be probably part of working in this industry, is just staying on top of the different business models, staying on top of the different shifts and changes in the industry,
right?
So that you're not necessarily waiting for this kind of the highway is ended before you're looking for maybe an on-ramp or an off-ramp for your career.
Yeah. Or the famous thing about being an entrepreneur, and that's, I brought this up to many people, is you're the parachute, you've already jumped out of the plane trying to figure out how to make the parachute work now, right? and that's kind of where they were at, what do I do now? And I don't want to mean it out to be that dire. I mean, they all had opportunities to continue employment. There was those offers out there, so I don't want anyone to think they didn't come in and say, hey, you're all fired. It was just trying to figure out what was the right fit for them. Many of them, it kind of forced them to make a decision. You're exactly right. And so I think there is a need for that. There's a and I hope our podcast in some small ways is helping that for what that need is. Because there are people that are making decisions which way to go based upon false information. Or old information, old beliefs. For example, the one that came up a lot also was, hey, I need insurance for my family, so I can't go 1099. Now, I totally understand that. There is a firm belief in our country, and I think it was a reality a long time ago, that it is just impossible to get health insurance unless I'm with a company that offers it through a group plan. Yeah. But that's just not the truth anymore. There are many opportunities out there. The health market workplaces in each of the state, and I might have said that health insurance marketplace, whatever. I think I got to get it. In each state, there is an opportunity for you to get eligible. There are a lot of them out there. A lot of out there that are really are not any less expensive or not any more expensive than what you can get through some companies.
Right.
I know when I left, my last W-2 role and looked around, I was paying about the same as what I was paying there. I mean, a little more, but not much. And so when you start there's and I think some of that is definitely brought around by W-2 companies saying, hey, come to us, we'll give you this. You won't, man, you're not gonna get any insurance to leave. But I think a lot of it's just a belief system that's out there as Americans, that we think like, oh, that's where you get it. It's this big scary world on the 1099, and what do I do? I'm never gonna have that option. So that is something that a lot of people have to overcome and figure out, like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna have a 401k if I don't do W-2. Yeah, I'm not gonna have health insurance from my company. Yeah, I'm not gonna get Social Security matching. But there's ways to overcome all of those things. There are vehicles in place, or investment vehicles in place that rival your 401k. There are health insurance options out there. There's ways to basically create an LLC and then pay yourself out of the LLC and still have Social Security benefits. So all those things are there. There's ways to achieve that, while usually operating then in a 1099 world where you're going to make a lot more income. So and that's a whole other thing I'd love to have on a future podcast here. Is somebody talking about maybe that concept of there is a lot of opportunity in the 1099 space, and I coach agents on this a lot, is a way to structure your business that you don't have to go through those difficult times when it comes time to qualify for a mortgage or qualify for a house, and suddenly, you're self-employed. I'm gonna need 80,000 documents now. So there's ways to manage that to make it a lot easier for you.
What was maybe the one question that you were surprised by? And some of those I think are all about probably what you expected as you started to have a conversation. Were the questions that you got once or more than once that were felt maybe they were a little more from left field?
Yeah, there was two people that and disconnected from each other, and I couldn't find any connection between the two of them. They were absolutely convinced in their mind that we were simply a shell company for another company. That we were simply a puppet being ran by this other company. And both cases, they thought the same company.
Okay.
So in both cases, I had to get them to understand that wasn't the case. They were just like, well, I don't know, I heard it from a reliable source, and yada, yada. That you had to take that, I had to provide both of them with documentation showing, like, from our state, showing, like, no, I'm 100%. I even took one of them and I showed up my tax return, just pulled up my laptop and showed, here's the company tax return, it shows you everything, and I showed you who it is, and this flows through to me on, so that was an interesting one to get this kind of in their head, and neither of them, and I didn't press them on, and neither of them ever shared who got it, but somebody had obviously, got them convinced that. So that was an interesting one to definitely overcome. And then there was a lot of questions just about, is this legal? Is this, a lot of that sort of, and that's a natural question. Of course, it's legal. Well, I mean, I'm not going to get a lawyer, but companies would pot out all the time. There's acquisitions happen. Of course, this is part of what's going to happen. So
well, and it, one of the companies that we both formerly worked at, and I was partially responsible for crafting the stories, is that ISOs are organizations that don't necessarily have people's best interest in mind, and they're profit hungry and anti-merchant or all of those things.
We live under your bed.
Right. That's right. And so I'm sure there was some of that as well too. Just that, and you've done a great job of it. I don't think by any means we were convinced that we're the only one that's doing good work. I think there's lots of them that are doing good work. But it is definitely a belief that's been held, especially at some organizations, that it's the wrong way to operate in this business, even though most of them are ISOs themselves.
Exactly. And there are people out there that are convincing them that, I think this is dying away. But when I was in that world, like, you didn't go to any trade shows. You weren't encouraged to go to trade shows. I encourage everyone that works with us, everybody in this industry, if you're listening to this, the find your acquire show that is in your region. There are 4 of them every year. They're extremely inexpensive. You can get into them for usually less than a couple $100. you know, you don't stay at the hotel where they're at. Sometimes they're a nice hotel. Stay at a cheap hotel down the street if you can't afford whatever. Like, get yourself there. Just walk around, start familiarizing yourself with the industry. The first time I went to one of those was absolutely amazed that, you know, I thought everyone was gonna have, you know, a third eye and like just talons and like they're out to just eat my children and you really realize like there's a bunch of great people that are trying to do the same thing we're doing here. There's a lot of great products out there, and that's I encourage everyone to do that. I mean, you know, this year there's a show in New York, there's a show in New Orleans, there's a show in Vegas and Chicago. Thank you. And Rod would kill me if I forgot Chicago. I'm sorry, Rod. But you know, those are great opportunities just to go and just check it out and enjoy and learn what else out there. It doesn't mean that your company's not a great company. I'm not saying, hey, you know, get away from your company. I'm just saying, like, just learn. Learn what's out there. Yeah. Go to some of the classes. Go to some of the events. And it's just a great opportunity to learn what's out there, so that if this does happen to you at some point, and it did to me, and it was only because, I mean, I never really thought about this right now, it was only because I had attended so many of these shows during my time at Beyond, and it connected with so many people through the trade shows that I knew what to do next when I left Beyond. I had at least some people that I was able to pick up phone and call and say, hey man, I need some advice, I need some guidance, I need some direction. Otherwise, I would have not really known what to do next.
Yeah. And I know some of the folks that we've talked to, that's the role they've played, is people that maybe didn't really know what other options there were, and were just trying to say, like, what, you know, if I don't want to go where we were acquired, what else can I even do, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think just some of the basic idea, not even the W-2 versus 1099 or anything like that. It's just like, how do I even find these other companies?
What do I do next? They're not in the phone book.
Yeah.
Not too many of them.
And we've talked to enough of them that have also said the other side is true, that there were certainly folks in the ISO community that felt like there was fresh blood in the water, and so it churned a whole lot of folks. You know, it's funny how many people I'm connected with that all of a sudden started posting on LinkedIn really regularly right around December 23rd. You know?
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, they decided to choose Christmas as a time to really show up on social media.
Yeah.
But you know, so I think that's the other part of it too, right? Is that I think it can be a little overwhelming.
Absolutely.
The number of ISOs that are out there, and you know, and again, how do you evaluate them, and how do you prioritize kind of what matters to you as you're building your portfolio or building a future and such.
Our good friend Chris Schmeeds that from works at Talos Payne now, amazing guy, good friend. You know, Chris recently said in a post that people want to believe, right? That you want to believe the person who's sitting across from you. So, you know, you don't necessarily dive into the details and check it all out, and so in these times, you're getting calls from, you know, 8,000 different recruiters, 8,000 different maybe people you worked with in the past are like, dude, you gotta come over here, this is the greatest over here. And they're not necessarily being level with you, right? They're not telling you the goods and the bads. Their job is to recruit you.
Yeah.
And you know, you want to believe that. And that's why, you know, I don't think people are irresponsible or doing the wrong thing because they're not reading all the details of it. It's human nature. You want to believe too. We're trusting by nature, and they trust that other person that's calling them.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I'll say, and you've done this on previous episodes, that anyone that's whether it's connected to this acquisition or just generally trying to figure out kind of where they can go next.
Yeah.
You know, we're a group that will gladly answer your questions without trying to convince you that you have to come live in our neighborhood, right?
Absolutely. And man, we should do that sometime. I should just share contracts that I've read, because I do regularly. I had one the other day that I reviewed for somebody, and I actually got super excited because it talked about you know, the survivorship clause, right? I talked about this, right? And I haven't talked about this on a podcast. I thought, okay, I'll make sure I'm getting old and senile here and repeating things. And I got so excited because, I mean, if anybody that's followed me in the Pay Compass story knows that, like, having survivorship written in your contract to where your residuals are protected and it's written in your contract is a big thing to me. Mm-hmm. And it's a big thing I want to change about the industry. And you know, people talk about, hey, we're changing the industry, but like, are you really? What are you really doing? Like, this is one of the things I'd love to have as my mark on the industry. And it doesn't need to be my mark, but I just want to see change, right?
Yeah.
I would love to see, 20 years from now that every contract includes it. Just like lifetime residuals are in all the contracts now. That didn't always used to be. That just changed over time. And I hope this does as well. And so I was reviewing a contract for somebody the other day that's always coming to work for us just as a favor. And in there I saw survivorship. It was one of the last things. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Somebody else is doing it. And then I read, and it had a caveat in there that yes, your residuals continued on to your heirs after you passed away, but your heirs were required to continue to fulfill your duties as an agent. So that means, Jenny, your 6-year-old daughter needs to go out and change out the terminal paper, when your merchant needs it, or otherwise you're not getting residuals. And it's like, come on, we're getting closer, but we're not quite there yet, guys. Yeah. That seems to me is just a company that's trying to throw something in there to say, oh yeah, we got that too, without really meaning to fulfill it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna call that time for today. I know we probably scratched on some future episodes in some of these topics. I welcome back to Phoenix because I know you haven't spent a whole lot of nights here.
It's been nice to be home.
So it's good. I'm sure it's good to be back and in our cool new podcasting space. And we'll do this again next time.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you.